Goes. Share off the whole thing. Try and get some things moving. But yeah, we'll get started in 5 minutes. You may want to grab pen, paper, and all those other fun jams, because if you are settling in for the whole show, good luck, all the power to you. But we are going to try and go through every single major Arcana card here today. Because then I can pull this all off and put it up on my YouTube and just make my life easier in other ways as well. Because why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Am I right? Am I right? Hi, Anna. Good morning. I hope you're having an excellent day so far. I should do a little comment. I don't even know what I want to write for a comment. Anyway, what else we got? What else we got? Nothing else that super matters. So yeah, 5 minutes. If you're able to stick around for it, fantastic. If you're not, then such is the life. But I'll catch the replay for you later on YouTube. What do we got here? That's there, that's there. I've been actually thinking about trying to set up a private class of some such for training and development purposes. Because I know a lot of people that they would do well knowing what the general imagery and signs and everything's all about, but they don't have access to the teaching quite the same way, right? And so today is free, but going forward, yeah, I know I'm gonna stop myself right there before I say something that I'm gonna trip over myself on later. Just cause. Can you turn a little bit that way, my guy? Oh, not really. Kind of, sort of, poorly. I can't wait to buy a new one. It's gonna be great. Four more minutes. If you need a coffee, go and grab it. If you need a pen and paper, go and grab it. If you need a notebook, go and grab it. If you've got your own tarot deck, feel free to go grab it. You can pull out all the major Arcana cards, or you can just kind of thumb through until you find them, whatever works for you. And we'll get started here in about 2 or 3 minutes. So if I do the live one on the weekend, it's going to be like 20 or 25 bucks for the whole weekend, in person or online. And I'm trying to set that up. What I was doing before was $50 a day, 4 days, 2, sometimes 3 hours each day. And usually I'd come out like every Saturday or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Try and set it up some way like that. I've known a few that would charge like, the gal that I worked with at the restaurant to you charged more like $500, $600. I'm trying really, really hard not to be that outrageous with it, because I find $500 or $600 for this could be a little bit ludicrous. But some people do take it and then create a whole career out of it. So I understand her logic, and I don't mean to disparage her. Morgana was, as far as tarot readers and spiritualists go, she was one of the best for being right on the line of what is good and what is bad. Really appreciate her for that. I like capping it out at 200 if possible. And that's why I do the 4 days at 50 bucks each. And then if we need a 5th day, I don't charge for it, just to make sure that you are getting the skill set. Because to me, it's more about teaching you how to interpret reality and just find hidden patterns in your day-to-day life. And it's less about giving you something that you're going to turn into money generation. If you do, that's great, all the power to you. But there's more to being a forecast tarot reader than just in memorizing all the cards. And that's one of those key elements. That's one of those key facts you have to kind of work with and work around, right? So 1 more minute, and then we'll start this class. Once again, this is going to be Tuesday Tarot teaching time. And with this Tuesday, I'm going to be teaching people tarot going forward. Today we're doing the major Arcana cards. And if you want to join me for next week, I really, really would love and appreciate a subscribe. It will be subscribers only sometime in the near future. And so subscribe now while you can for the dirt cheap price, and support the show as we continue to grow and expand and do everything moving forward from here. 9:59. Let the last few filter in the door, I guess, and then we'll get started. I was half thinking about trying to get the Galaxy Tarot on my other phone here, and I might still try to do that. Just for the giggles of it, just for the giggles of it. But this screen is so cracked. Does that say 10 o'clock? It sure does. All right, thank you so much for coming out and joining me today, guys. So, the long story made short, we're going to discuss the major arcana. The tarot starts with this section. Cards 0 through 21, each representing a major concept in the journey of development and growth in life. This starts with number 0 here. Number 0 being the Fool. So the Fool indicates new beginnings, new starts, new adventures, a person setting themselves out and about into the world in an attempt to try and discover something new and amazing about themselves. I got it. I got it. You can slide in up there too, bud. So what we see specifically, consistently in all these images is what looks to be a person somewhat in step, in movement, in transfer. The Fool begins everything with a single step into something unknown. Sometimes it's a matter of needing new experiences to develop one personally. Sometimes it's about breaking away from old things and finding a fresh start somewhere else. Sometimes it's just about realizing that every fire starts from a single spark. And wherever that spark can be found, so can the Fool's energy. In the Rider Way, we see in the colorized version, the white dog behind, the cliff is very nicely defined, the sun's very bright. It's a cheerful energy for a person that's about to walk off the edge of the cliff. And that's how new things tend to feel. There's something overwhelming ahead, and we're just about to take a big step into it. We see this reinforced somewhat in the uncolorized one, where it just sort of makes it very black and white, stark. There is danger, there is risk that exists here, but you have this loyal companion in the dog that might help guide you out of bad moments. Some people say that this is a spiritual signification. That's an indicator of having good divine energies trying to support you and help you. Others sometimes say it's just about seeking good counsel, good friends. The Fool is always in good company with other fools, can sometimes come to play with that, but I don't think it's about having somebody else that's just as dumb, quotation marks, just as dumb, but more about having somebody that may recognize the greater picture and just want to make sure that you don't get hurt. When we move to some of the other cards, like the Fool card down here from the Zombie Tarot, there's an indication of walking, yes, approach with, potentially what we would call the worldly possessions. He's going to a graveyard, he's holding a wreath of flowers. We can assume this relates to his love, his feeling of love or adoration or a care that he has towards a person. But this person's dead. And a zombie currently coming up from below the ground. And so I can't imagine this being a good start. More walking into the danger of the zombies in the graveyard, much like the Fool walking off the edge and into the nothingness. Now this deck here, this is the Heindel Tarot. The Heindel Tarot I find to be very artistic and flowery, and you deal with a lot of different energies sort of crammed in on the one card. The bells, usually seen like sleigh bells or adventure bells. The bird taking flight in the background, I've never been able to identify exactly what bird that might be, but you get a constant imagery of a person just sort of being befuddled with their options and their choices, having to make a step forward. Even the look on the person is long cast, aiming off into nowhere. Again, you get that energy of needing to step forward into some amount of change, chaos, or something else. The last deck that I've got here, this deck here is my Fate cards. This is actually the first deck that I ever picked up. They use some neat symbolism. The elements become all these shapes that you see in the tree up top, and they put a lot of planetary symbology and other symbology around in the border, including words and text. the first word that comes out after Fool is potential. And that's going to be my key thought for anybody when you're in consideration of the Fool. The Fool is the great potential that exists if only we could follow through on action and direction. The Fool is possibility. The Fool is anything, so long as the Fool can apply itself. And so what we see with that energy of the Fool is that need to sort of fire us off, direct and focus towards the goals and dreams and desires, to get up into the tree that we're taking shade under and get the good fruits, get the good flavors that are available there. It's about realizing the potential of the moment. And if you don't act upon the potential of the moment, you're never going to actually see yourself ahead. I'm good today, Umbura. How are you? On the one border, it says, I am the unlearned, and they can learn from me. I was mentioning before how for some of us, we learn by going out and getting the experience firsthand, and then we come back around and apply that experience to our life. Others of us, we observe other people going through their experiences, and then we learn from their mistakes, and then we learn from their encounters, and we act upon that knowledge. The Fool can be both teacher and student. How we approach the Fool is the key. If we approach the Fool as something to be ridiculed, attacked, or hurt, then we will become the Fool as we now have to learn on our own two hands. We will go through the experiences instead. If instead we can look upon the Fool moment and use the wisdom and experience of others and acknowledge the power of observation to learn from this person as they go through their own way, then we can see things differently from a higher perspective that allows people to make their mistakes and changes and then come back a changed person as a result. And so you got to understand that the Fool is not so much a station or curse as it is a blessing of possibilities. And how you act upon it changes who you are, changes what you are, evolves you. How you treat others on their Fool journey is also important. It tells people a lot about you when you're not being super nice to those around you. So that there is the Fool card. Remember, your key terms here come back to new starts, potential, limitless possibility, self-activated, self-initiated, self-driven. The Fool on an adventure, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and eager for the experiences of life, sets forward to develop themselves into a new, greater form. That's our Fool. Now the next card coming up here, the fate cards call it the Trickster. Most other decks call it the Magician. And we see here, the Fool, following his folly, has developed new understanding and new potential, new skills and capabilities. The Fool has come to understand the nature of the world moving around them, and by working with the energies of the world, they have become master of their own creations, able to manifest and move their energy forward by their own will. Now specifically, I'm going to abuse the Magician here. You notice on the table there are 4 symbols: the Pentacles, the Cups, the Sword, and the Wand. These are the 4 suits of the tarot deck. Oddly enough, they're also the 4 suits of a playing card deck. I have a deck of playing cards that I keep with me anywhere I go, and I can tell your fortune just as well with those as I could with any other tarot deck. The point is, it's all just symbolisms. And by recognizing what power is represented in these symbols, this person has developed a new state of their power and affinity. The crown of infinity, indicating a perpetual nature of their will and desire and their spirit in the world. The rod held high to show that they can call the powers to and through themselves into whatever it is that they're working with. This individual has developed, transformed, and upgraded from the full format that they were in before into a new format that allows them a greater influence and control over the life around them. This is where people start throwing around their key terms like manifestation, creation, bringing together new power, new energies, new forms. This is where we see that person discussing heavily, usually, a sense of blossoming into their better form or truer form. Now, I won't deny that the magician provides a great influx of energy. How that energy is manifested and focused is particular to each person's story. And so whereas the magician might show up for a Wiccan that has developed a new sense of bell magic, it might also show up for an altar boy who's found a new form of stoic piety. It's about getting to the next level, getting to the next evolution, getting to the next stage. And what that stage looks like is very different from person to person. We notice as we move away from the Rider-Waite deck into the Zombie Tarot, they've changed the magician into being a scientist. We don't get the same symbolism as we do with the other one, and instead it focuses it more to the idea of this mad scientist created the whole zombie problem for all of us, and now we are living in their world. It's here that we start to see some of the darker elements of the magician come in, because the magician can also be the gift of manipulation, the gift of quick tongue and sly movement and sly flow. The magician becomes, instead of being a symbol of potential and power, of tyranny and control and dominance. And some readers like to read reversed cards. If you are a person that reads reverse cards, that would be what you would call one of your defining traits of this magician. Someone that is manipulative, someone that is sly, someone that is mean. So you got to decide early on as a reader, are you only going to read right side up, or will you accept reversals showing up and work with them in a different way? And once you've picked a way, be consistent with that way. If you don't read reversals now, don't start anytime down the road. If you read reversals as muted energy, you call it muted energy for the rest of your time. If you believe that reversals are a different definition, then you have to consider it as different definition. Once you've set your path and keep it consistent. Wimburo, we're just going to do teaching today. I'm so sorry, but I will definitely get you on Tuesday. I can get you first on Tuesday even, or sorry, Thursday. Today's Tuesday. So you can tell I'm just waking up. Thursday for sure. I'll make sure I get you drawn though. Absolutely. Thursday we do free cards. Tuesdays we teach. So Mad Scientist here starts to draw some more of the negative aspects of the magician. Something that may be using their gift for manifestation and creation as a toxic trait against the world, and may be more of a risk than a blessing to encounter. Still, top of the game, top of the day, they are still the best quality of themselves, but the use of that quality could be dangerous. The way I'm going through right now, I'm treating them all as right side up. I mentioned the reversal on the magician just as a good introduction point to discuss that reversals are something you may encounter and to set your choice really early on with it. On future videos, I might just do all the definitions as reversals and kind of go through it that way, because then we can kind of see each one specifically under that light. I'm also a little bit flippy with it, where I read reversals as muted energy if there's lots of them clumped together, and if it's only one in a string of 3 or more, then I will consider it an alternate definition. And that's specifically based around the structure of the reading, right? One card draws. I don't think you can draw one card draws reversed. And that's open to debate with some people. But as an example, reversals, just trying to go through it with the magician as a best example, because when you start thinking of positive creator switching over into negative elements, that's a really, really big swap, right? The about it this way, with the magician down here being that dark scientist that probably created the virus, they're almost shooting straight for that right out of the gate. And that's kind of the cool thing with different tarot decks and different oracle decks. If you're an intuitive reader that is going to garner more information from what looks on the card than what the card is defined by, then this becomes a very powerful risk. This man, he's playing chemistry with your heart, and you need to be careful. Versus this man has a chemistry with life and a potential to create amazing things around you. Same card, but because the imagery changes, the definition might change. Great question. Thanks so much for popping out with that, Des. The Magician in the Heindel deck, I find, again, very stylized and trying to go more of an approach of art. And they specifically shoot as much as they can on dualities with this one. You've got the sun and the moon in the background. You've got two elements of self, higher self, lower self. All of the suits showing up in the middle. It's very, very good Mercurian communicative understanding one's flow in nature that they try to shoot for with this one. When we get over to this one, the fake cards, they don't call it the Magician anymore. They call it the Trickster. Now, tricksters aren't necessarily a bad thing. It all comes down to where you meet them, right? If you meet a trickster that's hanging out at the local fair and they're doing their little juggling act for you and then all of a sudden pull a lion out of their cup, that's hilarious. That's awesome. That's the kind of trickery that people want to be experiencing because no one gets hurt and it's all just sleight of hand games. To get to that level of playing that kind of performance needs a certain energy within yourself. And they'll always tell you that if you want to manifest well, you have to have confidence in what you're manifesting. You have to have belief and faith in who and what you are to see that energy work through into that greater creation. And so they specifically point out the magicians need to be empowering themselves, confident in themselves, and self-assured in order to make things actually happen and move around the world for them. They've got all the elements still playing on this one, playing throughout the cups. And I do call the lion sort of being the lion's share of the major arcana and energy that comes there. One side, I am falsehood and I am truth. I am knowledge and I am ignorance. The knowledge and ignorance one, ignorance allows others a means over top of you. Ignorance allows others to take your energy and use it their way. And if you are wise and smart and knowledgeable, you will know exactly how that system works in study of people and observational practice. Talked before about how if you learn by peeing on an electric fence, your hands-on experience is great. If you learn by watching other people, your observational knowledge isn't wisdom, but it is knowledge and powerful. And this one is more likely to use observational knowledge to read the situation and read the room. They're going to keep things in a means that you understand, but that might not necessarily make it as true as you want it to be. Falsehood lies in deception or tricky things. I sometimes have to deliver something in such a way that it's really obviously not true on the surface, but it's a hyperbole or an example that's going to reference and refer back to something else for people. When I can illuminate things to people in this way and in this fashion, it uses the magic and the secret of connectivity to draw people from one truth into another. That might make falsehood very powerful, but if you can weave it towards the truth, it's going to serve a good purpose in the end. The Magician, 5 times, 5 different decks. If you've just joined us, thanks so much for popping on in to Tarot Tuesday, where we'll be doing tarot training every Tuesday going forward. Today I'm going to go through all the major arcana cards, So if you're loving this, give me a follow. And Tarot Tuesday at some point will turn to subscription only. Not today, but at some point. And so if you want to support, help me out, by all means, throw that down my way. Next coming up is the High Priestess. There's a sub-lesson on all of these about how they're bouncing back and forth between masculine and feminine concepts. The Fool being a feminine one, the Magician being masculine, and the High Priestess being another feminine, and back and forth and back and forth. There's actually a really cool number of cool things that you can do with a properly built tarot deck that tells a story from Fool to World, where laid out properly, everything side by side becomes a perfect balance in masculine, feminine, and communicative energy. I'll do that on a future show just because it does require a lot of space to lay them all out properly. But we get often this idea that the High Priestess is the feminine version of the Magician. And I really want to shoot that down right now and make sure that we understand something very clearly. A single human being can be both Magician and High Priestess. In fact, all human beings tend to be a mixture of masculine and feminine concepts. Too much of a balance one way or the other is to an individual's detriment, not to their benefit. And so, on some levels, and to certain extents, all people are designed with a balance of masculine and feminine. I prefer to refer to it as force and field. That gets into different semantics and arguments and debates, though. The point is, just because the High Priestess doesn't come out, just because the High Priestess comes out for a man, does not say anything about the man in orientation, identity, or flow. It says that that individual has a receptivity that is keyed and honed to the absorbing of certain knowledge and information and energies into it. We see the High Priestess showing up on these 4 decks. This deck calls it the Virgin and focuses specifically on receptivity. The Virgin concept focuses on fertility, but not of the body, of the mind. The ability to accept new ideas and new concepts, to absorb in something that might be foreign, different, and unique. Something that hasn't been received before, something that hasn't been experienced before. I hate to say this, but when some of those people get all high and mighty about they will not go and try that even just once, that is in stark denial to the natural design of all human beings, because at the core of us, we're all designed to receive new things to some level. After all, we were at one point all children, learning and growing through our hands-on experiences and developing an understanding of ourselves through those hand-on experiences. That is the most natural form of the High Priestess, just being given something by the universe and taking something from it. In the very practical, it's the idea that if you grab a skunk, it might make you stink very badly. Going into the more etheric format of it, it's the hope that through meditation and devotion to certain divine thought, a person can receive divine gift or divine presence. All of this could potentially be true and is represented to some level within the High Priestess's energy form. That's why we see her sitting, dressed in proper fashions for a priestess of her status, between the positive and negative energies of the black and white, the yin and the yang being represented, or the masculine and the feminine coming together into one form, and a push into development and seeing oneself not as a force of energy, but as just a presence of being. The High Priestess is that field, having things laid upon it, having things put to it, and then it decides if what it's received will receive empowerment. This is the trick, and this is the superpower of the feminine energy form. The field decides what stays within it. And so the high priestess, receiving this knowledge, receiving this power, receiving this wisdom, then decides if they want to keep it or if they want to send it away. This is where the feminine becomes supreme power, because it can dictate what comes and what goes. At least it should. As such, she becomes the gatekeeper for all knowledge, all wisdom, and all possibility. She is the symbol for greater potential beyond physical form and the ascension to that nature of holy or divine or pure. As we break away from that on the Rider Way and see it sort of in the Zombie Tarot, they focus very much on the death concept with the Zombie Tarot, because it's a Zombie Tarot, let's be honest here. I've been having fun with this one, because it's more, the imagery feels more akin to a different cultural subgroup, like hoodoo or voodoo or something towards that extent. And yes, if we're looking at it from context to context, from their perspective, that is what the high priestess representation would be. For them old Romans, it would be the oracle at Delphi. For certain Japanese culture, it would be places where you're dealing with river spirits or other types of natural world beings. It becomes that presentation of that which embodifies natural world when we're using it from that particular background and custom. Voodoo hoodoo comes from the natural energies and manipulation of those natural energies. Again, in that same concept of high priestess. With the Heimdall, she takes less of a prominent role and becomes more of an etheric image. She's hiding in there, just behind her bubble. And she becomes more of the ambience, the mood, the energy of all space and flow around her. She becomes the knowledge of all things around her and within her. Coming back to that idea that the divine feminine holds the field together, and she then decides what enters and what exits. So powerful energies there again about being in control, dominance, the gatekeeping element that is supposed to come along with it. And then we get my fate cards, which want to convert it all the way into something else, because I love these fate cards. They just got to do it right. Receptivity being their key on the Virgin card. It is about acceptance or denial, taking in or refusing access. I am shame and I am boldness, because at the core of it, if you're not aware of shame, you'll never have a reason to adjust or change certain behaviors or accept or not accept certain things. Boldness, challenging for our own excitement because of our own desires. I am shameless and I am ashamed. I am going to do whatever I want if I am shameless, and I will be bold when I present it. And you notice a lot of the double negatives start to play on their side text, and that's intentional. From their perspective, when you see the full range of the duality, you start to understand that you're looking for that balance in between the two. And it's just about finding that way to balance in between the two wherever possible. The High Priestess, balance of divine with physical form, control of one's space, control of one's energy. It can relate to divine gift, divine message, or direct from on top communication. But I think more than that, it's about recognizing oneself as the flow through of the universe. Universe, we're looking at it from Fool's Journey. We just left the Magician. You're bringing things to you now with your rod held high, and you're deciding with the power of the High Priestess where everything goes to. Everything in its place, everything in its dynamic, and everything in its balance. The High Priestess sorts the energies of the world and allows us to see them clearly within our own natural tongue. So, Mburu, they cut you off, you said. I'm just doing teaching today. I'm so sorry about that. But Thursday. I will get you in there for sure on Thursday. Even first, if you'd like. And then I post up the replay on Facebook afterwards. YouTube afterwards. And so if you're interested, I can always get you first on there, and then you can check it out on YouTube at the end of the day. So, coming up next to the Empress, just give me 1 second here. Empress is an interesting one. As a professional reader at the Russian Tea Room, there were 3 things that I found most commonly came my way. Older people who wanted to know how their family line was going to be. Younger people wanting to know when they were going to go through the next major life event. And traumatized people wanting to know how to heal. This card satisfies all 3. It is the symbol of the matriarch. It is the symbol of strong family lineage, stronger family lineage than the emperor, because her family lineage is direct to her with no questions or doubts. The Empress is the top of the family throne, because from her all family comes forward. This gives her the power of nurturing. This gives her the power of fertility. This gives her the power of prominence and position and power that goes to it. On Thursdays, yes. Thursdays are always free 100%. I'm doing training today. So when the Empress sits upon her position and becomes the proper form of herself, she is unquestionable, untouchable, and completely above all rest. In most of these, we see her, like, right away sits her in the big red chair, the big red throne. All the power is right there, and she is seated upon the throne. Remember that before we go on to the next one. Notice her throne too. The ornateness, the comforts, it's made for her specifically. When we look at it over here, she's standing upon a moon inside of the lake of the mind and the world. The doorway is behind her. She is the starting point. It goes through her. Even down here in the zombie tarot, we see mother's love going for the child, even though the child has become something so opposite. Over here, seated upon the tiger being usually a symbol within the strength card, instead used here to represent the great power and the great potential of the mother energy. The mother is given huge status and huge merit. And unspokenly, I think it's because we all do respect and understand that the mother becomes sort of that major focal point of family. And this is blessing and curse for some of us. If you end up pairing with someone that is not of the best health for you, that can become somewhat of a trouble. And so the energies of the mother can be very particular to a person. This is where, as a reader, understanding your client's motions of story and journey allows you to better relate and connect with where they're at in need. Those with positive mother impressions, like a mother bending over backwards to be good for a zombie child, that could have a very different effect upon a person than, say, someone who told the mother to sick the beast upon the child. There might be differences in how people experience the mothers, and you want to remember that and respect that as you're dealing with this card. That power is supreme, and that is both blessing and curse. The Empress comes around to indicate big changes within family. Quite often it can be an indicator of pregnancy. People like their clear indicator cards, and unfortunately with the Empress, it can be that clear indicator of pregnancy and possibly new children and growth coming out. When we see it down here, we get more of the nurturing, compassion, trying to get down on our children's level. And this is an important thing within positive mother dynamics. The positive mother understands that the child is just developing and growing like a seed, and they do what they can to nurture and incubate that appropriately. With some nurturing, some pruning is appropriate, absolutely. But if you prune too much, you kill the flower, you kill the plant. And so the positive mother understands the balance of that nurturing. We again indicating the seat, the comfort, the security, the safety. Even she looks very open, inviting, and comforting. And that's when we're dealing with positive tones and positive vibrations of the Empress, that is usually 9 times out of 10, one of the key hitting factors. It represents that person that gives you the bosom of warmth and growth. Warm bosoms are neat. There's the ones that are just comfortable and give you a soak of energy and make you feel uplifted and positive and happy. And then there's the ones that instead inspire vulnerability. Empress should come with an inspiring of vulnerability. She should be able to make people feel more open to be themselves. That is at least one of the key indicators of the proper energy form. We'll go through the fate cards, little borders here. On the one side, Empress goes straight to the mother concept on the bottom. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife, I am the virgin, and the virgin. Truth of the matter is, I used to work at Easy Home. I used to lease furniture, and then I'd have to go repossess it when people couldn't pay exorbitant amounts. It was horrible. Never work for Easy Home, guys, and never buy furniture from Easy Home. But I digress. I remember a mother coming in with her kids once, and my boss, a fellow by the name of Derek, says, well, at least you know she puts out. It's impossible for any mother to escape that comment. And it is so shameful that every man, most men, some men, whatever variation, but that any man would use it as a weapon that way. Because without that aspect, how do we ever bring about new life and new offspring, right? Without that process, there is no new children. However, the mother is the only one that has clear evidence of a child. As the mother is the only one with clear evidence of the child, the mother becomes the key component of family line and family legacy. Up until very recently, most men had to take on faith that their wives were having their children. And if the wife did not want the husband's child, she could absolutely get somebody else's child in there instead, and the husband might not know the difference. Modern history, we now have genetic testings and things to work our way around this problem. Concern or anxiety for some people, whatever you want to call it. But the truth of the matter remains that the mother is still the one that pushes the child into the world. The mother is the gift of life. The mother is the Holy One. 100%. There is no way around that. Wife and virgin is a neat comparison as well too, because wife is a possessive term, quite often illustrated or designed and worked into the system to be a means of domination so that the woman becomes that property of exchange. When the woman is with her original family under her father, of course she's a virgin. She's pure, absolutely pure. There's no question around that. When she's married off, well, now she's a wife, and that's his wife, and it's okay. And it's the contrary points to the whore concept. Unmarried is quite often seen as a spinstress or something else to that negative effect. Married makes it better, and there's a paradox that exists with that. The person hasn't really changed, but their power has shifted from one perspective to another to the outsider's eye. We as individuals have to recognize that our perspective is not what defines a person. It is what they have within them to share with the world. The mother's energy shifts greatly depending upon that interaction with the world. Wrong way. Next up we have the Emperor. She goes, she, which one we gotta go with? The Emperor has a stone altar of a chair in the major Arcana in the Rider-Waite. I've always drawn a contrast to the discomfort that he obviously is being subjected to versus the comfort of the Empress. You look after your queens, being somewhat maybe of a background context, or more that the presence of the mother is supposed to be providing a greater sense of comfort, security, and stability. At least that's what we would all kind of hope and gun for, right? Different variations on the Emperor card, with the primary tones usually being about authority, power, dominance, daddy, concepts of being the father, the supreme ruler, or the higher up. The seeder, or at least the sperm donor in some cases. I think if you rationalize the Emperor as father, that's where you get the best bang for buck with this card, because at the core of it, it's about what you are putting out into the world. I was discussing earlier how masculine and feminine I like to break down into force and field. Field, a space, a bubble, a period of something that is unto itself, untouchable, holy, and divine. That is the divine feminine. The masculine, then, is bringing idea from itself to the next place. It is the force of conceptualization, piercing through all things as it travels forward. Seeing that in day-to-day life, it really does come down to a question of longevity. If you are a single person and you scream on the street, you will affect the street for that one scream. If you are a motivated person that can gather others, they'll all come together and they'll scream a few times before they get bored, sick, tired of it, and then it's just you probably screaming in the street again. But if you take the role of father, mentor, and guide, and move forward to lead people towards a better version of themselves, and every day that version comes together to scream in the streets and call out strongly, and you reinforce it not just as a thing, but as this is a guiding principle of life, and you instill that on to next generation, into your children, stepchildren, or whatever formats, they will continue to go out and scream regardless of what anybody tells them, because that was the guidance that was given to them from this force. That is the conceptualization of father. Father as a sperm donor is irrelevant because it really doesn't matter, he didn't push the child out. But father as a guide to knowledge and understanding and interaction with the world takes it away from being a genetic contribution and makes it instead about being the philosophical and life-focused devotion. That is, how many of us watched our fathers, mimicked our fathers, and started following in their footsteps? They become role models, whether we intend to make them role models or not. And for better or for worse, good and bad comes out of it. In the Rider Way, no child mentioned. In the Heindel, no child really mentioned. But in the Fate cards, the child is on his shoulders. In the Zombie Tarot, the child's behind the leg in defensive posture. This is one of my biggest pushes, with the Emperor being key on the father that does the right thing. Others might take it to being dominance and control, and there may be personal interpretations that come up, and I can't dispute each reader's personal understanding of a card. That's for your development. That's what you want to grow into anyway. But I have to push that the Emperor should be the father who does it right. This excludes poor quality from the title. And I'm doing that intentionally, is what it is. It also encourages a higher quality out of all. And that's got to be met at some point. And so, this Emperor having the child in protective posture in the environment, in the world of Zombie Tarot, makes perfect sense, because that is the future right there. He has to protect that future no matter what. He dies, this child continues. It's just the way that it is. And so he's got to be the one that shows that child how you protect yourself from the zombies. On the other side, in the fate cards, lifting the child up for greater view, greater perspective, putting the child on your shoulders so that the child is above you. It ain't about you, it's about the child. All of us will expire at some point, but a lot of us have this big idea of legacy and the desire to be known even after we're gone. That is an emperor viewpoint. But your best way to get there is to be remembered in the children who then go on to profess, claim, and show the nature of the person based on who they've become. So if you elevate the children and bring them up to that higher level and that higher form, that's when you can continue on through them. A man stopped me while I was serving back at Palliati's and says, well, what do you want out of life? And I mentioned the kids, and I mentioned this, and I mentioned changing the world. And he says, okay, if you don't succeed, but you will. If you don't succeed, though, instill in your children those values and virtues, and they will carry on the journey for you. That is the emperor in a nutshell. Demonstration through your own character, how best to go forward into life. And through that, you nurture, you change, and you adjust the world. Yes, it can be about dominance and leadership as a CEO of a business, but a CEO isn't just automatically an emperor. They have to be of greater quality to be an emperor. And when you see it, not so much about the title and the seat, but instead about the actions and the quality of actions taken, you can start to tell who are your emperors and who are your fools a lot more easily. Just because they're in charge does not make them an emperor. The elevation of the future does. The emperor is not self-serving. The emperor is all about continuing the greater kingdom. Make sure it's always continuation that you're working with when you're considering the emperor. It always has to be forward moving. This is why a reversed emperor could be seen as a destroyer or a tool of annihilation. But again, you pick for yourself if you read reversals or not. In the Heindel deck, we see him almost given the Green Man effect, being near the tree, not necessarily in it though. So we see a tone that could come up with that about nurturing, caring, and compassion for the world, being a planter of trees, knowing you might not ever be underneath their shade. The wording on the fate card, on the one side it says, I am the ruler of my offspring, and my power is from him. You are only, yes, you are the guide and you are the direction. I am the ruler of my offspring. I am the one that shows them their way. But without them, I end. Truthfully, if you have father issues or issues with the man that you came from in that regard, trust, you end their line very rapidly when you decide to be a different person than they ever were. And it's very easy to break away from that influence once you understand that father is just a symbol for the first way that you approach the world. Turning over the cards to the next one here. We're almost to the point that they might switch up on me, and it's going to be fun explaining that one. If you've just joined us, thanks for popping on in. On Tuesdays, I teach tarot. On Thursdays, I do free cards. So if you're interested in a card, definitely give me a follow. And come check things out on Thursdays and see what we got to tell you specifically for you on that day. Today, we're going through all the major Arcana cards. And just getting on to card number 5, our 6th card today. This one being the Hierophant. Well, let's be honest, 4 out of the 5 decks here are saying Hierophant, but the one deck in the top left says Pope. And it's honestly, it's potato on this one. You could go either way with it and really hit the marker. A Hierophant is just a religious leader. Just someone that is in front of the people, guiding the way and showing the path. And so Hierophant is a fancy way of saying Pope of the Church. The idea here if we're going through the journey, what we've seen so far is a person going out fresh to the world, realizing that they have the power to manifest, realizing that that manifesting is hitting them directly on, and that they've got to nurture it and care for it like a careful egg, because they're going to show everybody else what it's all about. And when you start going to share who you are spiritually to the other people around you, that's when you hit the first major roadblock. You start to realize that people tend to not want to listen to the chaos and the mischief that is spirituality. And so spirituality gives way to theocracy, organized religion, dogma, beliefs, structured tone. Hierophants sit in front of the people and preach out what they believe to be the truth based on their understanding of what is around them. Sometimes this understanding is from sources of knowledge, information and wisdom that then tells you how you feel about the world and how you feel about things. Sometimes it's from your own personal inquiries and studies, and I've sat around and thought about this while drinking wormroot tea, and I really do think that it's all about this. Wherever your belief comes from, quite often that belief becomes a point of tension between yourself and others. One, if you believe something and somebody else doesn't, well, why not? Obviously, my belief is the right belief. So why don't you believe what I believe? Becomes a question in a lot of people's minds. Alternatively, some people, the whole 6 or 9, is it a 6 or a 9, depending on the perspective that you're standing at? And a lot of big picturists like to say, well, you got to step back and look and see where they're at to actually know the answer. And you are technically correct, the best kind of correct. They're right. But that's not the point. The point is, one person can look at God and see holy salvation. Another person can look at that same God and same church and see tyrannical oppression. That is the key component of the Hierophant to me. The tension based upon perspective. There was an event being hosted in the southern part of my province here by a group, and they were going to pair, the age range on it is for youth, ages 14 to 25. Now, if 25 doesn't sound quite like a youth to you, yeah, me neither, but that is sort of the nature of this province. They have a belief that certain behaviors and certain cultures are appropriate, while the rest of us look at them and go, man, they stopped making 14 the age of consent in like 2003, 2001, so maybe not, maybe not, maybe not. Different beliefs based upon different backgrounds, different upbringings, different churches, and different organizations. And with that tension comes usually conflict and fear and some amount of control and dominance over what you are thinking and what you are considering. With the Hierophant, it comes back to that whole sitting at the front between two pillars to represent the doorway, but the pillars are not white and black, they're all gray. They're not really true forms. The red to emulate the emperor, but they're not really an emperor, and so they have to break it up with these crosses, meaning the power doesn't actually come from them, it's derived from somebody else. It's derived from this concept, and you submit to it because you believe in this concept, and this person here can do whatever they want in the middle with it. Down here, it's related to the TV, the teller of truth. This is what's on the news tonight, and we all feel quite a bit of shock that this is what's going on. I do like this one in that they approach it with keys, unlocker of wisdom, secrets, and understanding based upon the access that should be given to the right people. But it's an earth energy Taurus for a reason. It's about control of the resources at that point. If you're the only one that has the keys to heaven, then everybody has to come through you. Decolorized version of that one. The last one is the Pope over here. Now, I love the imagery on it. Screw you, you're going to hell. Sin, sin, sin. On the top, I am sinless. On the bottom, and the root of all sin derives from me. That is where the Hierophant started to make sense to me when I got older and started actually thinking through some of those concepts. The truth of the matter is, without the established word coming from a man saying, that's bad, that's evil, there would be no sin. There would be no wrong. There would just be people living people experiences. And as soon as we start putting this conceptualization of absolute good and evil on top of people, a belief that I am right and you are wrong, we create dynamics of sin out of that action. And when a person creates a mob around that construct, they create a dangerous situation for all. Because that mob will take that belief from the person that gave it to them and ascribe it to the God that they think is above them, when in all fact and actuality it just came from the person. The reality is, organized religion has a place in helping people to communicate what they feel and what they believe, but it is a human institution. It's a human institution designed to try and rationalize things greater than ourselves. And that's most of life. That's most of reality. Hierophant usually relates towards dogma, beliefs, usually rigid, sense of control, sense of influence over top of large mass, large people. The Lover's card. This is a personal favorite of mine to pick on, because a lot of people see the Lover's card and they get all swept up in the idea of romance, twin flames, deep connections, and all those kind of magic things. First off, straight up, twin flame is not a good concept, nor do I believe it is valid or truthful in the nature of the universe. The closest I got to it was the idea of pairing off prior to insertion into the universe, but the more I look into it, the more I just don't see it. So this isn't about twin flames. Soulmates absolutely are a thing, and soulmates bring about strange rushes of energy and formation. I believe we each have probably hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of soulmates on this world at one time, because we are all here collectively. It's just a matter of getting out there and finding them and having those chance encounters, those possibilities for moments of rush, ration, and high potential. The Rider-Waite defines it as lovers, as well as the Tarot and the Heindel deck, Zombie Tarot and Heindel. The Fate cards define it as choice. We're going to hit that one last. The Lovers brings about the opportunity for new connections that could increase or decrease what is going on in your world. You're not really sure where this possibility came from. You just know now it's in front of you. And now that it's here, you have to work with it, around it, and through it. It becomes, because of this idea of connection, it becomes a key one for most tarot readers to say, new boyfriend, new girlfriend, fantastic relationship, it's amazing. I think the power of rush and excitement, though, doesn't come from the fact that it's a new relationship, but because it's a new choice. When you make a choice for one or the other, when you make a choice for something, you put your energy into it. And so the Lovers, for a lot of people, becomes about what they're putting their energy into, what they're passionate about, what they're excited for, what they love. It's really easy to define that as other people, because that's a way to get people just loving on each other and not loving more important things like the esoteric wisdom of the tarot deck. It becomes a means to make sure that what's important stays hidden. And so don't get swept up in this one being about lovey-dovey connections. You have to see this card not as about lovey-dovey, but as about your love for making choices, your love for choosing, your love for free will. Define good. Define good. Anyway, with that in mind, if you can take it from being about love and make it about being love or lust, then you can start to get that comparison perspective happening with this card. Something has presented and it's making you feel a strong kind of way. So you've got to make that choice now. Do I devote myself into this thing, or do I hold back on it? To make that choice, scrutinize what's in front of you. Is this something that is long-lasting, sustaining, and healing? Or is this something that is just a bright flash of alcohol in a frying pan as I burn away whatever's carbonized on the bottom. Delicious, wonderful, exciting, will only last as long as you're eating it. This way you can then pace yourself when the Lover's card comes into play. You're not pushing too much excitement and too much exuberance. You're making it about the control that you should have over your life versus encouraging people to go off on a whim with some new stranger that shows up on them. Got to find that balance when you're telling, because if you tell people the story in a way that controls their future, you're violating free will, and that's the danger. This card is one of the biggest trip-ups for young readers, to step away from being a reader of the story into being a prescriber of fate. And no person can prescribe your fate besides you. No reader can make something happen, but you can make things happen if you believe and give that power to somebody else. The subtext on this one: whatever I will happens to me. Whatever you give your power to will affect you. Whatever you put your passions into will become you. Whatever you design and create, that is what you're going to get. So as best as you can, as much as you can, make sure that you make this card about the power of choice and choosing what you're passionate about, making it a concept of love versus lust. If you focus this one specifically on relationships, connections, romance, and affairs, you're doing people a disservice. Huge disservice. Nothing pisses me off more than some readers really, really aggressively saying this card's all about the new twin flame connection. There are no twin flames. Twin flames do not exist. I'm sorry, guys. It was a term made up by some ex-Nazis because they wanted their love to be as sanctified as possible. It doesn't exist. Sorry. You can fact check me on that one and come at me if you want, but I know I'm right. Next one up. Speaking about being right, this one is all about coming over your obstacles and over your barriers. The Chariot, as seen up here, represents a man in control of the reins of two fantastic beasts, one black, one white. There is a city fading off into the distance in the background as this man moves his way across the scape, getting on to their next goals and their next objectives. The Chariot being represented in these 4 tarot decks, with my fate cards calling it victory. I really like the term ambition. However, I don't like key terming ambition to this card. I like key terming self-control. Why self-control? Well, let's look at it from another white wolf, black wolf story. Specifically, the white wolf and the black wolf that lives inside of you. The white wolf is very noble, very steadfast. It's going to keep close and tight to you at all times to protect you and secure you. It is on your side. That black wolf, though, he's a dog. And he wants to go play with that other dog in the field, make little doggies. And he wants to go running off and chasing that deer, and he just wants to do everything his way. And I'm specific on his way because it is the most, honestly, the most masculine mindset to just shoot off and fire the energy loosely and directly forward. Self-control, self-discipline becomes the tool set that pulls in that wolf so the wolf doesn't pull you into a situation that you don't want to be in. It's about, yeah, sure, ambition, but more in the vein of, can you guide your ambition and focus it and strain it to the right target? If not, then you will always be at the mercy of your whims, and your chariot's going to get pulled off the road every damn day. But if you can be in control, then you've got all the power right there to get yourself wherever you want to go, over top of obstacles, over top of barriers, over top of boundaries. You move yourself across the world. We see this a little bit played up in the Chariot down here with the people defending their chariot from the zombie apocalypse. Not so much a white wolf, black wolf kind of dynamic, but more just a survival, endurance, and getting over top the obstacles and risks in front of you. Rising up to conquer your moment and be ahead of the game. In the Chariot up here, it goes to more of like a boat, almost like an Arcana setup, and storms and sleet and all kinds of things working against it. There, the wolf becomes the gale against the person, but the person is on top, at peace, going through the moment and just striving through to the next level and the next evolution. We see constantly a sense of control of the situation, self-assuredness to a small degree, being on top of the moment, not just letting it overwhelm you or restrain you from your best potential, but rather seeing it as your time to shine, to step up and do the right thing in the right way. With the fate cards, they define it as victory, ambition, taking the sword and conquering your way across the fields. You're going to do it, flying through to achieve the great success that you know you deserve. The text on this one: I am compassionate and I am cruel. I am the one who is praised and the one despised. I could pick on billionaires really easily with this one, because how many people have billions of dollars? My favorite one is the grocery store that just got something like 56 million or 560 million in Q1 profits. And it worked out to about 14,000 people that they could employ at 100,000 or something ridiculous like that. And they're winning, they've got all the money, and we hate them for it. They won the game. We can admit that we won the game. And some others will praise them for winning the game because from their perspective, that's what you do in Monopoly. You try to win the board. But for others of us, they become despised. It doesn't change that they were ambitious enough to claim something. And that's the reality of it. The more you climb up the chain in any way, shape, or form, the more others will try to detract from below and pull up from the top. The more of a splash you make, the more you will impact those around you and be seen and heard by them. In the same light as with the chariot overcoming obstacles, if you want to achieve greatness, you have to be bold enough to try and take all the flames that come with it. Get distracted by the pretty ladies or the guys with the cocaine, and it's not going to go so well for you. You got to be focused specifically on where you see yourself at best quality. And so that is why with the chariot, my key phrase is always self-control, discipline, ambition, sure, overcoming the obstacles, setting goals and achieving them, conquering the future where possible, pushing yourself to get to the next level, to the next stage, to the next flow. Now, if I'm not mistaken, my cards are about to do something weird. So bear with me on this one. You'll notice up here it says 8, 8, 8, 8. And this one, it is also, oh, other side, 8. But this card says justice. These all say strength. You will notice this in some decks. Some decks take the justice card from number 11 and put it into number 8. A lot of them will say it's because they see the infinity as the symbol of justice and balance and exchange. And yeah, okay, fine. Okay, fine. I won't dispute. Every tarot deck is written by whoever writes it, and it is in their structure and style to do so. With the major arcana, as long as it tells the right story, then it's of no major incident to me. But you have to be able to tell a story with it. Strength card, coming up here, represents strength of character, strength of health, strength of body, strength of mind, just formidable. The ability to see something to fullest and most powerful form, the capacity, as it were, to rise things up and engage them on their level because you're superior to the moment through confidence, strength of character, and identity of self. Dealing with snakes and liars, well, you don't lie and you don't cheat, so there's obviously no issue with them at all. Lion comes up looking for a good meal. I am not an easy meal, and you're going to chill out, little lion. You want to survive the zombie apocalypse, you're going to have the bullets on the mind at all times. The concept is in what's going to help me get through this moment, the strength to survive. So with this card, we see that innate nature of life to try and conquer, overcome obstacles, and get to the next stage in the next evolution. we see with the desire to see oneself as supreme. Sort of. Not supreme over top of anybody else, specifically supreme and over top over yourself. If we all focus in on being the best version of ourselves every day, we could embody this card quite quickly, because each day would be about correction from what we were yesterday and becoming something greater for the day tomorrow. I used to read a samurai notebook basically called Hagakure, and this retainer from the 1700s recounted how for a while he tried to write down every regret that he had every day at night. And he realized that his regrets and his mistakes were too numerous. He says it this way: upon realizing that the number of incidences were too numerous to account, I abandoned the journey, but kept the spirit of it. This is the spirit of it. Who I was yesterday is inadequate to who I am today. And so if I am improving myself and bettering myself, I will continue to get better into the next tomorrow. If I took 3 bullets to kill that zombie, but only 2 bullets to kill this zombie today, and only 1 bullet to kill that zombie tomorrow, I'm getting better, stronger, and more capable of surviving the zombie apocalypse. I'm gaining in strength. If I can be the best version of myself, other creatures will see me for who I truly am, and they will not fear me for who I am. They will appreciate what energy I have. If I conquer the snakes that would otherwise lie and slither about me to choke me out, and if I instead twist them and break them, they can no longer hurt me. If I give this wine away to that which would rob me of my better health, and say instead that I will stay safe and healthy for myself, true to my values and beliefs, I will stay stronger in form and mind. It is a little bit of that self-discipline concept that we saw in the previous Chariot card, but it expands more into the elements of being purely yourself. I have a concept that each of us is our best version of ourselves, constantly, and just trying to evolve and grow with that is kind of key in seeing ourselves not stuck to any one form on any given day. So you are the best version of you could be today, and tomorrow you will be a better version because you'll have today's experiences on top of tomorrow's experiences. This helps us to define ourselves, know ourselves, and see ourselves. Strength of character, strength of identity, confidence in who we are in physical body and in action and in form. No deception, no deceit about who we are. Excellent card to show up if you're looking for signs centering around health, but we don't read about health because health is the domain of the doctors and they have a specific college that dictates and decides what can and cannot be said. And also, one second, guys. Sorry, somebody's having a small medical moment. Strength of character, strength of identity, making sure that you're true to yourself, keeping the key form. Yeah, we said all that. And realistically with this one, it's good indicator for health. Right, that's where I was. Good indicator for health, but we don't read health because we are not medical doctors. This is where we get into some of the tricky stuff. In Canada, until very recently, you could only read tarot as entertainment. They finally removed the outlawing of witchcraft in 2017 or 2018. Pretty sure it was during Justin Trudeau's era. And so at that point, people doing divination is no longer illegal, but it's still potentially scammy, right? And so this is one of those ones where when you start approaching it to the domain of another college, and what is a college? Well, the College of Physicians is a medical college, and they have a certain amount of influence over the medical nature in our country. There's also groups for psychiatry. There's unions and civil workers as well too. And it is somewhat of a similar concept to a degree. If something is under another's legal domain, And specifically, that comes down to financial advice, comes down to medical advice, and it comes down to, what's the last one? Legal advice. Legal advice is another really important one that you don't want to tiptoe on. Those ones we can comment, but if we give specific direction, there is risk of consequence and repercussion. And when this was just entertainment, there was no protection for the consumer for those repercussions. Now that it is no longer just entertainment, it can become something that is moderated in that regard. So I don't usually advise people to give medical advice where possible. That's one of those things that will get you into a certain degree of trouble and a certain degree of issue. Keep it broad, and otherwise develop rapport with your clients so you know they won't take what you say as specifics. Lastly, if it's a person pushing a certain medical drink but they don't really have the medical background on it, don't buy in. Mother God, really neat documentary on her that you can track down there. But basically drank herself silver to death. And I would not want to see anybody else go through that. While I figure out if we're going to have a medical episode today or not, I'm going to just keep turning cards here. The next one to come up is the Hermit card. Hermit card is an interesting one, centering specifically on the power that comes with isolation and self-control. Only got an hour and 15 in before everything rolls apart. This is still progress, I guess. So I'm going to digress for a minute here and just have some fun, because I still don't know what's going on with my afternoon, and it's throwing everything for a loop that I just don't like. These cards here at the Heindel deck, these were the first cards that I did cash readings for way back in the day. And the story goes that I walked into a tarot spiritualist shop, Sense of Serenity, and I loudly proclaimed, I need a tarot deck for telling actual readings with designed to exchange for money and cash. And this deck fell off. Fall off, it might be a little bit more generous than I should be, but in thumbing through them, it was the only one that really made any movement, any flow. I do believe that if you do put something out to the universe, you will get some level of response back. That's just part of playing with the universe. This particular deck has multiple different tools for interpretation. There is the standard imagery of what you would see in a tarot deck, but they also throw on zodiac and planetary symbols. They throw on Norse runes. They throw on Sanskrit, which I haven't learned how to read yet. And at a later cards, they start throwing on the I Ching. So there's like 4 or 5 different ways to divine with that one deck. I absolutely love it. They use a particular rune. They use a very particular rune for the Hermit. They use the rune Isa. Isa is a Norse rune, and in Norse runes, you're seeing each of the objects, the runes themselves, as containers of the power that is being used there. Isa power is the power of frozen aether, the frozen material that becomes our natural physical realm, and as it melts into our universe, we become bigger, richer, bolder, a more diverse universe for its energy. The Hermit is an isolationist, divided and removed from the flow of all things. And so the idea of Isa sounds weird because, well, this person's, as you see here, kind of out on their own jam, doing their own thing, being away from all things and all health. What is it that Isa could really do for this person? And truth of the matter is, the Isa is them themselves. They have become instilled with wisdom, knowledge, understanding. They have a perspective on things that changes for their best being, and their best being is to be on their own devices, in their own way, on their own format. In these two, we're seeing that outlined as an isolationist with just the light in their hand, stick in the other hand, and they're just off going into the wilds. The Rider-Waite being very plain Jane, straightforward, walking across barren ground. This one puts the idea of connecting with the natural world, animals, critters, and all those kind of fun things around them. And so being of the natural world rather than being of the human world. The zombie tarot goes slightly different approach in that it becomes more the hermit away from the chaos, sheltered off, blocked off, locked off. Now here's what we got to remember. It's supposed to represent doing what is the best for the scenario of the person. In the Rider way, going away from humanity, being out in your own way, could make sense. With the zombie tarot, sheltering yourself in and not trying to rescue anybody else totally makes sense. And so there's a duty to self that's supposed to come through with the hermit, a duty to make sure that you are doing what is right for you in those moments and not letting yourself be led astray by somebody else's intentions or somebody else's formats. It's about you going your path, sometimes alone, because if we're with other people along this path, we may find that we just don't make it quite right. No specific choices. I love it. This one here defines it a little bit differently. Instead of calling them a hermit, they call them a shaman. And they stick them in front of the crowds. Maybe. A shaman is not necessarily a religious leader. A shaman is simply a person who is more comfortable with the spirit than they are with the flesh. And so what we get here with the shaman indication, going alongside the hermit, is that this person isn't going to find their power and their wisdom through other people. They're going to instead find it through their own selves, specifically their own willpower. Willpower is one of my favorite energy forms. Willpower is the manifestation, creation energy. It is the ability to shape our reality. Willpower is one of the key blocks to making it all work properly. The four very much are form, feeling, thought, will. With willpower, anything that you desire can be moved and shaped, but you have to be able to submit your will behind it. Most of us, for most of our life, have been taught not to express our will. We have flipped from that to other dynamics where we are sometimes too liberal with our will. We'll have to find a balance some generation, someday, sometime, but it certainly won't be anytime soon. That's just the way of life. And so what we need with the shaman is to recognize that your will is a tool to use upon you. Your willpower is not meant to domineer others. It's meant to domineer you. Going back to my conversation about all of us having a dark side, we have to be in control of our dark side in order to be the best conscious being that we are. And so, your willpower is not about how you can exercise against others around you. It's only about how you can exercise against yourself. How you can work against you. The side text on this one. In my weakness, other side first. Do not be afraid of my power. In my weakness, do not forsake me. To be able to walk away from everybody and everything, to just cut it all off, it's power. And to remove oneself from situations that they don't want to be in. You don't want to be around the alcohol, you don't want to be around the drugs. To pick yourself up and pull away from that, that's a powerful exercise of will. That's some shaman energy there. And so when you can exercise that power, you unrest others. Not because you're trying to be willful against them, but because you're simply expressing willpower, and that scares people. So use it properly. And use it to get yourself where you believe you can be most healthiest and most supreme. The hermit, self-driven, personal direction, personal path, autonomous, developing more with natural world than with social world. More about your own insight than the insight of everybody around you. Next up, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune! There's no real prizes on this one, though. I like how the fate cards call it literally fate. Just fate. And this is another one that I think some readers get themselves too tripped up on. You hear a lot of readers put out ideas out there with this about, well, anything could happen and it's all random chance and it's all random luck and you're going to have to just kind of go with the flow of it. And maybe. I've never seen a situation that I couldn't apply myself against, though. I've never seen a moment of fate that I didn't walk myself into in some way or some flow. And so when the Wheel of Fortune comes up, I like to point out the fact that this could be very much a Jesus take the wheel kind of moment. It's not so much about the idea of fate's going to work against you in ways that you can't control, but more of the, if you put yourself on the path, you are going to experience and encounter exactly those things that you think you are due for. It's a bonus with that, because if you want to become something, then you just have to associate with it and put yourself in the lines of it. But more often than not, this card shows up at times when people don't want that kind of turn of events, you know? If you're planning a bank heist this weekend, you don't want the Wheel of Fortune showing up on you, because that means the control of the situation is only partially in your hands. That's the key. Partially in your hands. If you choose to enter into this moment, it will be your fate, your willpower, as seen on the previous card, against everybody else's. And so this moment becomes one where everybody is going to be taking a shot. I love the Zombie Tarot for this one. Everyone's going to take a shot at you, and you're going to have to decide how best you want to navigate yourself through that. Pros, anything can still happen. There is potential here. There is possibility here. There is great room for shift and transformation. On the downside, though, if you don't do it right, you're going to find yourself in a whole lot of chaos. A lot of the key terms you'll see with this one: changes, chance, possibility, abrupt change, rapid change, high intensity usually plays along with it. I strongly encourage an idea of taking control of your situation and not just being a victim of it. Here it says, I am control and the uncontrollable. Do not be ignorant of me. Be on your guard. If you keep your head in the clouds and not looking at what's going on the table in front of you, it is your own damn fault. You have to be aware of the moving of all things around you. Fate is the experience of our willpower against each other's. And as long as you are aware of your energy mixing and meshing and working with everybody else around you, you will absolutely be aware enough to get yourself through that moment properly. But if you're ignorant, you're going to get run over. Now we get the actual, well, justice in the Rider way. If you were watching earlier, you noticed I shuffled a card deeper from the Zombie Tarot, because the Zombie Tarot makes the Justice card number 8. This happens from deck to deck. Sometimes people go a slightly different way with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's just a slightly different tone of interpretation. With the Justice card, specifically, we're seeing a symbol of scales constantly across the board. Scales are a neat symbol. Truth of the matter is, a scale in of itself is not a perfect system. The scale, done well, simply measures two things. Those two things that it's measuring might not be equatable, but we find ways to make them so. I have a small little weight, and it's 10 pounds, and it represents 10 pounds of grain. And you have to throw on an equivalent amount of gold coin to get my 10 pounds of grain. based upon this weight, but there's no grain actually on the scale. There's nothing of the actual thing on the scale. And that's one of the things that catches me most with the justice. It's not actually what you're putting on the scale, it's something else that you're usually looking at. Something else being measured by system, by law, by organized discourse. It does quite often relate towards legal issues or paperwork issues or accounting issues. Issues might be a broad word to use, but it governs those realms easily because those are the areas where we see measure and evaluation, measure and consideration. A well-designed, well-maintained scale will always measure fairly. But because scales themselves are devices, they can be manipulated. And so a scale that's been manipulated will never tell you the truth. Being able to understand that this card isn't just justice itself, but the measurement of, the scaling of justice can sometimes create a bad taste for some people because we think that justice is going to come out in the way of heavy-handedness, because absolute justice is the most visible and apparent justice that we know. However, there are different forms for justice to play out, and sometimes it's not about the absolute moment, but about the 10 or 20 years following it. It is in the outcome that justice is really felt. And so, whereas these all say justice, I really do like using the keyword system specifically. It can be about laws and established understandings and established measure, but at the core of it, it's literally down to the nature of systems and how they can be handled, manipulated, controlled, or shifted. It's very much to the nature of understanding that anything designed, anything built is a tool that can be used, yes, but it's a tool that can be manipulated, adjusted, and controlled. Justice does not always mean it's going to go your way. It means it's going to be measured. And you have to be prepared for the nature of that measurement, not just for the nature of justice. So keyword system, keywords evaluation, keywords consideration, communication is a strong one with this one. Authority does bleed into it because usually we're seeing the measure of something that we've given authority to. It's something that we see as being that higher form, higher experience, higher nature. Next one up here is the Hanged Man. I like the Hanged Man. It was the Heindel deck that got me started to think about the nature of the Hanged Man as being a long-term experience of transformation and growth. See, in every major religion, there's a point where I'm liking myself because nobody else is liking me right now. There comes a point where you have to consider passage of time in transformation and metamorphosis. With Jesus, they spent 40 days in the desert, they got tempted by the devil, and they got pushed through this whole kind of transformation. From Odin's, it's upside down on the Futhark tree, the Yggdrasil? One of the trees, casts the runes in front of him, hangs out there staring at the runes, and develops deep insights and wisdoms from it. Mahatma comes out from the palace, sees that there are people sick, there are people dying of starvation, and there's people literally dying. What's dying? What's death? WTF is this? And goes on this big long soul journey and becomes the Buddha, the first Buddha, and carries on the tradition of Buddhism. Almost every religion, there's somewhere where they go through that journey of discovery and journey of change. And so when they get to that stage, when they get to that evolution and they start getting up to that next phase, they get stuck. They get stuck and they have to go through the torture of trial and test to see if they are ready for what comes next. That is the nature and the spirit of the Hanged Man. Now, zero-sum game is a term that gets thrown around pretty consistently with it. You're not really going forward, but you're not going backwards either. The Hangman on the Zombie Tarot is a great example of this. You're stuck suspended over top of all of the things that are wrong in the world right now, but they're not touching you. You're fine. You're safe. You're okay. Just don't fall. Just don't slip. Don't get any further down, and you'll be okay. Hangman in the Rider Way, there's a strong focus on the spiritual enlightenment by the glow in the behind the head, the halo. An indication that this person is becoming greater and fuller and more for their time spent hanging upside down on a tree. When we see moments of stagnation, we have to realize not all stagnation is absolutely bad. Sometimes we do slow down for a period and we get stuck in a time, and we have to go through the process of shedding or molting out of an old form into a new one. Crabs, I believe, do this. Lobsters, I think, do this, where they become so grown within the body that they have to molt it all off, shed it off, let it go. And while they're doing that shedding, they're I believe, growing a little bit bigger or doing something that releases a lot of energy in the process. They're not gaining for it. Like, it's literally ripping your armored shell off of you. So no, it's not gaining anything for it, but it is expanding and becoming stronger and better as a result of it. And that's, again, in the Hangman context, getting that richer nature of yourself, becoming a higher level of yourself, because you stepped through that gate and through that portal and through that evolution. With the Heindel deck is when I started thinking about it, because they put the symbol for tear on here, striking through, breaking through, accomplishing through. It's also the symbol of Neptune, grander consciousness, grander understanding. That's where I started to piece together the idea here that this is more, it's not just about being stuck. It's about becoming even greater for yourself in your divinity because you were stuck. Becoming an evolved force and an evolved nature to the next formats and the next possibility. Hanged Man, still what they say with this deck, they also go with the subtext of sacrifice. Absolutely, sacrifice is appropriate with this card. Seeing oneself lose time, lose health. In Odin's case, he lost an eye, but he still saw more clearly after the fact. And that might just be good poetic phrasing, but it worked. And he became a great shaman and guide to his people, and then eventually their divine form. The side text, I am the knowledge of my inquiry. This is one of my favorite side texts in this whole thing. This is the point where people, in the journey of the major arcana, a fool is walking through the world and becoming greater for it. This is the point in their walk where they realize the first fall, it doesn't work. It doesn't quite match. What I am and what I started out as doesn't work here. I was a fool and I was a magician, and I tried to be all these good things and rigid and structured and developed, but none of it's working. And this is where we see the first great fall. The more you ask about the universe, the more it will torture you. And this is one thing why I call it dancing madly. I don't say I live life, I say I'm dancing it madly, because I got into looking into life for patterns and the secrets of it, and it just gets weirder the further you go. This is why I'm trying to plateau off at just learning the different languages of what I already know, because the more I study, the more I get nervous about what's on that other side. At what point does it become obsession and we lose ourselves into the fantasy of spirituality rather than just living spirituality? And I don't disparage those that want to go that far, but we still have to be part of shared reality, making sure that you don't lose yourself to another reality. Don't get lost in heaven being a key point for me. The Hanged Man can be that risk. You've asked a question and now you've gotten to that point where you don't know if you want to know the answer. If you can suffer this moment and carry through, you will become much greater for it. But you will never be able to go back. You will never be able to return to the old form of what you were. By going through that transformation, you are going to go through death. The Hanged Man is the perfect flow to that one. Because if you're looking at it from a literal viewpoint, Yeah, you hang a man and then he dies. I get it. I get it. But what if it's not a man hanging, but a cocoon hanging? In that case, yes, the caterpillar on that tree is now dead. It no longer exists. It no longer is a part of the world, and it's no longer here in this world with us. But what is with us now is this wonderful transformed creature that is a beautiful butterfly that can open its wings and fly wherever it wants to, however it wants to. That is the purpose of the pressure of being in the hanged man situation. It is a cocoon of pressure and suffering to force that transformation through. Force is my key word. So death card here, number 13, is about that forced transformation. Forced transformation is peculiar. It's inevitable. It's always inevitable. It's not something that you are designing and pushing for yourself. It's something that you are having to accept and embrace from outside of yourself. It's not you standing at a signpost going, well, I think I want to go over to Texas today. No, it's straight up, you are on the road. It is now a river of push, and you can't do anything but be pushed towards wherever it wants you to be. It is the pressure of creation in that format. With that energy pushing and rushing through you, you have to be willing to let go of what you were to embrace what is to come next. And that is the death, the surrender of the past you so that the new you can step in. A lot of people get very much hung up on the doom, demise, and those kind of concepts with this one. And it doesn't have to be. Just because the death card comes up doesn't mean that you have to change jobs or have to change partners. And I think that externalizes the point of the death card. Heck, the zombie tarot here really even pushes straight up to the cross-section of the person, looking at the different organs and trying to figure out what makes it tick. They're super specific, and it's an internal working process. It's not external. And when you can take that development, when you can take that change, transformation, and metamorphosis and make it internal for you, it's no longer somebody else's problem. It's no longer somebody else's fault. And you can exercise your full will, your full energy towards making yourself change and transform. The top, middle, Heindel deck with the crow and the messenger and the communication energies that come with it. Yeah, okay, there's a scythe indicating the reaper, but I'm pretty sure that was thrown on there after the fact because people weren't sure about the raven and crow on its own, just expressing the messenger of death, the messenger of change. When you can realize that you need to change, that's a powerful moment. It's a humbling moment. It makes you realize well, first off, it makes you realize that you are not complete. None of us really are and won't be until our deathbed, and that's just the nature of things. It also helps you to realize that there may be wisdom in seeing yourself as incomplete or mortal. And by allowing yourself to see yourself as not having to be an absolute in life, you no longer have to go through the rigid process of always meeting that expectation. For most of us, that's a personal form of torture anyway, because we can never really keep up with the image we make in our mind. The thought of ourself is perfect. The physical expression of ourself is not. And the death card encourages us to try and keep the gap between the two as close as possible. If the old you is not holding well, let go of whatever it is that's keeping you in that bad state and transform into something better on the other side. Some like to see this as the death of the addict, the death of the cheater, the death of the porn addict. Others like to just see it as daily process. Let go of the old, transform into something new. Oh, the death card on the side says... Oh, other way around. Okay. I am the one whom they call life, and the one whom you call death. How many of us have cried, oh, I've lost this, I've lost that, and somebody else said, well, that's life. That's just the nature of it. It's just transformation, it's just change, it's just regular process of moving forward, growing up, and evolving to that next new state of you. Death card keywords: transformation, metamorphosis, pressure into new evolution, evolution, development, growth, letting go of old things that no longer belong. So, this is where the Heindel deck starts doing its own thing. Not going to complain. It changes the Temperance card here to be instead a message of alchemy. And I like the concept of alchemy. Alchemy is kind of cool. Alchemy is ultimately just taking anything, mixing it, and combining it with other things around you to create new things. And so when you wake up and put your cereal into the bowl and then put your milk on top, that's a form of alchemy. Two different machines or two different substances coming together to create a delicious breakfast. It's not quite the same as one or the other, but it's a nice mix of both of them together. Fate cards refer this one as peace. Comes up very much here with the idea of justice, and that I find kind of interesting. Justice as a concept is typically about making things right, making things proper, making things appropriate. Alchemy, it's about making things better and finding the truth of the matters at hand. Temperance is about the patience and the capacity to observe and watch and know and understand. It is detachment. Remember, we just had the hangman realize that they can't do anything to survive, and so they've had to become this cocoon of death and demise, and now they're out of it, and they don't recognize any of this. And they don't recognize any of this because they've transformed. They've evolved from being what they were before into being something completely new. And because of that evolution and because of that change, there's now a new them that has to experience the world with fresh eyes. Now, if they choose to look at it with their old face and old approach, it's not going to work in this new world. It's not going to connect. And so it's important with the Temperance card to know that you got to do it one toe at a time. Dip in slowly to really get a sense of what you've now become with these new wings and these new energies working around you. In the Zombie Tarot, it seems almost like they're going in the direction of a vaccine. We take the poison, and from the poison we extract the cure or the vaccine, and we can now protect our people. We've gone through great suffering, and now we can create great harmony because we have a tool that's come with us from this moment. Patience is not a tool that most people are happy to earn because it means that you had to hold on really tightly to something, and that holding is usually either painful or overwhelming or disruptive. It's never usually a good hold, let's be honest here. And so, when a person goes and takes their experiences and creates a good lesson out of them, creates understanding and comprehension, that's when they've accomplished that state of temperance that should come after every trial. Going back to the alchemy, it's seeing the mixture finalize and the final product starting to come together. In the idea of peace, it's no longer struggling, no longer in pain, no longer in anguish. It's realizing that everything will fall into place and justice will be seen and held. It is relief, release and relief. Side text on the Temperance card, Peace card, sorry. I am the judgment, and I am the acquittal. Judgment we'll get into really deep with a later card here, but it is assessment and evaluation, observation and power over top. It is looking at the moment and saying, I see and perceive, and I am going to extract all the details that I want for all of this. Acquittal can only come with a charge, but any person under judgment will feel charged with something, regardless what they did or didn't do. It's the nature of the beast. When peace comes, when the understanding of why you are under judgment shows, it is a satisfaction of release. It is acquittal. It is relief beyond comprehension, because I'm no longer under the gun. I'm no longer under the knife. Even if it turns out to be a judgment against you, sometimes that can be its own relief. It's no longer a question of defending what you said. It's now a question of, can you accept what the community has said? And if not, how do you approach it? So with the fate cards, we have it coming as peace, peace of mind. With the Heindel, alchemy, transformation, metamorphosis, and creating the moment into what you want it to be. The Zombie Tarot, we'll call it the vaccine, be careful work and extrapolation, and then temperance, peace and understanding. Now, this transition from temperance to devil, I sometimes like to call this the New Age trap. When I use the term New Age, I quite often am focusing specifically in the peace and love dynamic that showed up very prominently throughout the 70s and the 90s, fixating that only positivity was the way to function, that positivity alone was the only way to express spiritual truth, because from their perspective, positivity is the only way to engage a higher divine consciousness. If you're not being positive, then God doesn't love you. And that there was the devil. That there was the devil. Looking back at the temperance card, let's say for a moment here you've slowed down, you realize it's me that has to change and it's me that has to transform, and I'm going to accept this new me and the judgment that comes from the world as I go through this transformation. If you're not careful with that, that can become a devil in your life, because it exercises this form of control over top of you, inspiring you and controlling you and shifting you out of the mindset of being a certain flow and a certain way of openness, and instead into a flow of rigid, focused, concentrated beliefs. The devil doesn't have to be the actual devil, but any substance, any belief, any opinion, any desire that creates control over top of you is a devil. The irony of that is that means the devil could apply to a lot of our cultural concerns, including racism, homophobia, the general intolerance nature. Because there exists there a desire for something over top of those people, and the devil plays through that to try and exercise that toxic desire. So at the core of it, desire is the devil that affects every single one of us. The need to have it, the want, the I'm going to make it mine. That is the unrelenting devil that acts and focuses upon all of us. And whether it materializes in opinion, substance abuse, behavior, religious creed, or general malignant nature, as long as you are aware that there is a desire that is feeding that devil, you can usually attack the desire rather than the person and dismantle the situation so that they just self-destruct somewhere else away from you. However, if you're guiding a person through a tarot reading, then you got to do something more than just dismantle a beast for them. You got to help them to see where the chain is being made from. This is one of the most important cards to me about making sure that you're looking at the bigger picture in the spread around you. I designed my own spread. I called it the snowflake. I'll show it to you guys someday. But the idea of it is that I can find chains of 5 cards in multiple angles consistently. And so it's a little bit of a play with geometry, and it's a little bit of a play with abstract symbolism. Through this tool, I get usually at least 5 cards in a row, and the devil card being in the middle of that could be a good or bad thing. It really does come down to how does the story look with the other 4 cards. And there you can start to understand what it is that you're saying to people, how you're guiding them through their reading session and how you're guiding them through that moment. If it's obvious the devil comes from a substance, then easy targeting. If it's more splattered with swords and cups, I'd be mindful about the personal relationships and how you approach them. They might be really deeply ingrained and very hard to point at without triggering other personal concepts. Enough about the energy around it, though. Again, the devil is anything that exerts direct control over your willpower. It puts a collar around your neck and leads you around by a leash. We see a bastardization of the Lover's card being displayed here because the Lover's card is supposed to be about choice and the personal choice and passions. If that choice is instead a trap and a prison, well, that chain is now attached to the devil there in front of you. And so it keeps you locked to the nature and being of this idea. There is nothing else to it. What is this on there? Oh, it's vices. Yeah, they went straight with the substances in the zombie tarot because I think they couldn't figure out any other way to kind of approach it. Honestly, the human flesh, though, is the vice for zombies, but we'll debate that all another day. Heindel deck turns it into some of the common imagery that you would see around the world. Then you got the blacked out. And then you've got the fate cards. Now, the fate card side rating first. I am the slave of him who prepared me. I am the slave of him who prepared me. Your desires create the devil. It is you choosing something to desire so much and allowing it to have such occupancy in your mind, in your heart, that it becomes a domination upon your soul. There is no devils besides the ones that we create for ourselves. If you allow your desires to run fully amok and control who you are and define you and guide you, then you will ultimately become at the mercy of your desires. You will become enslaved to them in all ways, and you will not be able to shift yourself and move yourself out of that state of being. So with enslavement comes entrapment. Now, nobody likes this card. Out of all the readers I know, nobody likes the Tower card. I walked in having worked with my fate cards first, and people are all talking about the doom and gloom of the Tower card, and I'm like, what do you guys mean doom and gloom? There is no doom and gloom on it. Because what I was working with as my first construct of the Tower card was this. Okay? Yeah, okay, what's going on up top there does not look like a happy, good time. There's lots of things eating lots of people up there, and that just does not look like a good time at all. But this guy, pushing down to the daisies and the potential, it got me thinking that maybe the Tower is actually a bad place to be. The Tower is a bad institution, a bad job, a bad relationship, a bad moment, and it has to be knocked down. What makes it bad varies. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's them, sometimes it's the combination of both. But regardless, no, it is better that this be destroyed than that it stays. And so I usually talk about it being Princess Peach in Bowser's Tower and having to go rescue her and get her out of there so that she can go be happy with Mario again. Hear me, learn from my word, you who know me. I am the union and the dissolution. It is absolutely coming together to create something that becomes a bond. And maybe that bond is the devil in your life. When you start to look at it as the system of control around you, then the Tower collapsing is no longer a bad thing. I've never gotten this imagery on any other deck. This positivity to the Tower card, I have only found there. And so I know I'm a little bit on a stretch there, but I guess you could kind of call, oh, no, that's 10 Penny Tower right there with the ghouls coming on in. They're all in trouble. They're all in trouble. Anyway, I was going to say maybe there's a positive element there, but no, there isn't. You see on the regular tower, it's all dark, gloom, destruction, chaos, people falling to their death, fire coming out the windows. It's horrible. The Tower of Babel, represented here, being struck down by God, so man can no longer communicate amongst themselves, and they are no longer capable of rising to the next point. The Tower and the Zombie Tarot, they're all getting eaten alive. There's very few decks that will give you a positive interpretation of the Tower card, and I think that's a huge disservice. Yes, it's falling apart. That doesn't mean that you should go back and rescue it. You don't go running into a burning house once you've evacuated. And I think some readers sometimes, when the Tower comes up, they don't make it as inevitable, essential, or required. And this can sometimes lead people to try and hold on to situations that they really shouldn't be holding on to at all. It can lead to a lot of really dangerous problems, a lot of really bad situations and bad traps for people to basically suffer through. So as readers, I strongly encourage, again, look at the patterns around here. If it's obviously a relationship or marriage, but we've got the Seven of Cups for emotional cheating, we've got the Seven of Swords for physical cheating and theft, and we've got the Four of Pentacles for possible physical abuse, and this Tower card showing up as well too. I'm not going to say, oh honey, I'm so sorry about your relationship. I'm going to say, there's some shifts coming to your relationship, and I think they're long overdue. And they might not like that I'm calling it long overdue, but if it comes down to, do you appreciate being hit? Well, no. Then a Tower card is good for your relationship. Do you like being mistreated? No. Then a Tower card is good for your relationship. It's not about rescuing the person. It's about rescuing yourself. And so when I point out the survival element, it is always the person has to save themselves. You're not here to rescue somebody else with this moment. You're here to save yourself. And if you can save yourself appropriately and properly, you're going to be onto the amazing new things for yourself. But you have to save yourself. So Tower card, destruction, breakdown of foundations, breakdown of institutions that people feel they are reliant on, breakdown of established norms, shutdowns of businesses, marriages, corporations, cities, a crashing of vehicles. It is the complete dissolution and breakdown of function to the point that there can be no further contribution. This breakdown of things is followed by the Star. The Star is something. The Star is really something. Hopes, dreams, wishes, possibilities. It's the guiding light, the direction and course being very clear and laid out in front of us. A lot of people will touch on the mysticism of the Star, the shapes and transformation of shapes in the sky, allowing us to see new items, icons, astrology, interpretations for our universe and ways to understand ourselves in greater ways. I'm really big on the whole idea of celestial navigation, specifically going from one world to the next, that is North America to Europe. They didn't have GPS back in the day. They had stars in the sky that they would use for navigation. And so using the tools and devices of the time, I know if that star's over there, and this is the angle that it's at, then I have to navigate in this direction in order to get to my destination. And it was honestly a mastery of knowledge, science, skill sets that could then be applied to better navigate one and bring themselves from one stage to the other in the universe. There's a lot of focus on this one being, because of the symbol of Aquarius, the water bringer, shedding new insights, emotions, and vibes. But remember, Aquarius is an air energy, not a water energy. And so it's not about emotional share. It's more about the conceptualization. And so that's thoughts, ideas, realizations of truth, of forward motion, of potential, hope, again, being one of the keywords I come back to. This one makes it feel more like it's emotions and feelings and in the heart. I think with these, we get more of a sense that it's up in the head, the nature of the mind. I'm not quite sure where they were going with this one. The star is usually service. Is it service or survival? I'm thinking the purple star. That's not a purple star, though. It says Zombie Slayer. So they're going the star of accomplishment, star of achievement, star of destination. And again, we see how different tarot decks, different interpretations, sometimes slightly different messages that come out for it as a result. My big thing with it is always it is navigational points, leading you where you need to be. I am substance, and one who has no substance. Do not be ignorant of me. They might phrase that differently if they knew now what we knew then. That is, information has a certain weight to it, which is really kind of weird on a quantum level, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Hope is the belief that what is now is not permanent. What currently is just a part of a journey. It's part of a phase, it's part of a process. The stars are also part of a process. A single star is cool, but it sure ain't no sun. And it ain't no moon. And it can help navigate us, but it's going to move across the night sky. So at some point I need another star. The stars work more in conjunction and connection than they do just on their own. But if you don't have a single star to start from, then how are you going to get anywhere at all? Ideas have weight, sure, but you have to be able to push them and activate them and engage them in order to make that weight move forward. And so, the star is your indication that all the tools and all the steps are there. You just got to figure out where to push on and apply specifically first. So, hope, possibility, new direction or finding direction, the ability to see process, to see greater shape, greater movement, the combination of many to make out one. There's a Nelly Furtado song. Why do all good things? And I have to be careful with that song because when it plays, I usually end up losing somebody out of my life. This moon card has always reminded me of that song. There's a line in there she's talking about how dogs were barking at the new moon, hoping it would come soon. And I've always just gotten the moon vibe. I don't know if Nelly Furtado was doing that intentionally. Honestly, she's a BC girl, so I know she's got some of the Canadian magic in her, and it wouldn't surprise me. But the vibration of the moon, the illusion of the moon, the mystery of the moon, is in and of itself magic. Magic of the unseen, magic of the invisible, magic of the secret, the dreamlands, the water realms, the other side. The moon has managed to maintain this hold because it is invisible during the day, and at night comes out with a bright light that we don't know where it gets from, so much later in our time as a human being. It can block the sun enough to terrify entire armies. It comes and goes, and it's always consistent. It's always moving, it's always changing, it's always in adjustment. It plays with shadows, but it itself is a shadow. So the moon ties in all of that subconscious mystery and magic and intuitive understanding that we have of our world in a large way. When we allow it to become that guiding light for us, we usually fall into more of a mystical kind of step. And so the moon becomes that form of magic, reverence for the unseen, and an ability to see things through invisible ways. It's intangible, but very prominent in its presence. It has all the power of the towers dominating the sky, but at the same time it is humble, muted, misunderstood. They go very deep with the dreamlike state of it down here with the zombie tarot and tying it directly to the bed. State of rest, state of sleep, state of consciousness. The moon is the symbol of the subconscious in almost every astrological term. With the fate cards, they specifically tie it into illusion. Yes, the mystery of Stonehenge a little bit. The side text saying, I am the one whose image is great, and I am the one who has no image. There is no light of the moon without the sun. We come to understand this now in our older ages. But at the end of the day, the moon is just a reflection of other things. If it were not for that reflection, where would it really be? If there was no earth here, where would the moon be? Somewhere else, spinning with someone else. And that's the nature of it. It is only ours through the circumstances and held to us by the gravity of earth. Without all those things, it would have no form that we would recognize whatsoever. It is reflection of ourselves. And when we can get to the moon and the subconscious being that need to reflect with who you are deeper underneath the skin, it's there we can start to see this card as illuminating not just the night, but the dark side of ourself. Going back to my earlier talks, subconscious, having the beast tied to it. The moon helps us to see that beast come out because it comes when everything else is not watching us. And so out comes our beast, and our moon encourages us to understand it, to reflect upon it, to get a sense of how we can work with it, not against it. Some people will touch this one on being very associated with spiritual gift, insight, clarity, and power. And I do believe there are tones to that. Moon energy is neat. It pulls so hard on water that it makes us all go crazy every full moon and new moon. And when you start to realize it as a part of the process and not in lieu of process, it all just falls into natural order with you and not against you. Following the moon, we get to go on to the sun. If the moon is the illusion and the subconscious, then the sun in reflection is the conscious, the aware, the awake, that which is upon the surface. A lot of the standard Rider-Waite, this is the third one that would be your pregnancy card. New life, new beginnings, the sun shines and life comes up from the ground as a result of it. It can also be an indication towards new direction of job, career, a new path for yourself based upon the things that you've aspired to kind of push yourself towards. And so some people really, really, really like getting the moon as a symbol of they're on their way, they're developing, they're growing, they're improving, and they're just happier for the process of growing forward. With the sunflowers in behind, it's hard to argue that. You've also got the red cloak of authority, leadership, and being in charge. Again, powerful signs towards being the fullest and most accumulated version of oneself. This is carried through quite heavily with the Heimdall deck. There they go more the desert rose, bringing about life where there is none and being able to endure in all things, in all shapes and all forms. In this one, it's the sun setting as the helicopter gets away. It's the freedom, the realization you're going to survive, the new potential because you're away somewhere that they cannot reach and cannot touch and cannot affect. Truthfully, it's just about the awareness of life. It's about realizing you are everything that radiates out from you. Come forward to me and establish great ones. Among the small, come forward to childhood. Without the potential of our awareness and our self, how could we ever really make anything better of this world? The fact that we were not just being instinctual animals when we got together and decided that hunting a great beast together might be a good idea was very much to our benefit. Tribal lifestyle, all of this would have required establishment of trust, leading to homesteading, farming, bringing tribes together and making people realize that, no, I'm aware, you're aware, and we can all do this together. This consciousness encourages possibility, it encourages growth. However, if it's allowed to run as though it's forever, that can sometimes lead to problems. A child is innocent and unaware and just going through the motions of experiencing life so that they can learn and grow and understand. If we approach all things from a childlike state, then we realize that everything is moving in a much larger and more powerful way than we are. And by making ourselves a part of that process glowing with it, and not the only purpose of that process doing in spite of it, then we can sometimes ascend up and get ourselves to a level that is all-encompassing and working for the betterment of species, world, and universe all combined. It doesn't make the priority about you. It makes the priority about your awareness of life. And when you can focus in on that awareness and focus in on that understanding, be curious like the child, but considerate like the sun. You'll never burn things. You'll never scorch things. You'll just simply glow your normal self and let your energy do the rest of the work for you. Basically, self-realization. Self-realization is the key of the sun, so that you can then be judged, assessed, and evaluated for it. Most of these guys are saying judgment. This one's saying aeon. This is where the Heidel deck again splits off heavily. And they go with aeon and the universe for what the others call judgment and the world. Judgment is the evaluation at the end of all things. We have come to peace and terms with this is the nature of our experience in our walk. We realized that we were new. We became more skilled and more talented until we got stuck in believing that was only our way. And then we were conquered by the overwhelming odds of the reality around us, leading us to the trap of believing that we will never find freedom. Now we've come to realize the direction, our subconscious and our consciousness, and we realize our own folly. It's actually okay and everything will be fine. This is the final fall of the three. First one was the hanged man. Then there was the fall of the devil. And then there's this one. With the judgment, it's a gentle fall because it's a fall into forgiveness, acceptance, atonement. You acknowledge that it just simply is these things. This is the way of life. This is the format of the existence that I live in. This is how it's going to be. I lived and I experienced my life this way, and there is nothing I could have done differently besides my way. And so I am okay that I lived my way. I'm okay that I did what I had to do, and I am comfortable going forward to try it differently again. And that's one of the key elements for me. I'm going to go forward, accepting that what I did can be done differently. That's the call to arms. That's the call to judgment. That's the call to awareness, because you've realized yourself. Now look at us. Look at the universe. Look at the world and see yourself within that same moment as well too. See how you see yourself and see how we see you, and understand which one of us is really in that prison right now. Through the power of forgiveness and acceptance and acknowledgement, not resignment, but in some cases that too, we can then evolve ourselves out of that state and ascend ourselves to the idea that there could be something next, something new. Water falls, fire rises, a cycle begins and creates new life of energy and transformation within it. Motion, occurs within the entropy of the world. We want our world back and we're just going to bomb them all to hell and deal with what we have to for the fallout. If you haven't watched the Fallout show, you absolutely should. It's fantastic. But same idea. Clean the slate and let's let something new come through. And that clean slate is our world. Now in Zombie Terror, they just nuked it. So that's why they're in their bomb shelters now, and that's why it's all on fire, because they just annihilated it. In the regular Rider way, judgment is called, the dead rise, and they ascend into the gates of heaven and find continuity in all existence, all space, and all time. In the Heindel deck, this aeon ends, a new aeon begins, and the universe continues its endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Judgment passes. I am the one who cries out, and I listen. I am the knowledge of my name. I call out, this is suffering, and I say back to myself, it sure is. That's okay. Forgive yourself for it, and step into the next aeon. Step into the next creation. Step into the next evolution. Let's go one deck at a time with these ones. I am the first and the last. I am the utterance of my name. I am life. I am everything. I am nothing. I am the universe. I am creation. And with creation comes destruction. They go hand in hand. I am life experiencing itself over and over and over again, like a serpent constantly in consumption of its own body, continually and forever. The serpent again coming up here in the universe card, the continuation of life, the next evolution, world upon world, reality upon reality. I grew up. I could not walk, I could not move, and then all of a sudden I could. And then I could not talk, but I could start to figure it out. And then I was sent to a school. And each one of these were small little universes, and those universes were my world. At some point, the elementary school gave way to the middle school, which gave way to the high school. The body that did not change became the one that did. And the body that did change eventually stopped changing, and by that point, I didn't recognize it anymore. Then I get out into the world, and I don't recognize the world. And then I get old, my body does another change, and then eventually it ends. Each one of these sections are little worlds that we live in and exist in, and that we go through. And the more that we go through it, the more that we evolve through it, the more we continue these journeys. The fool to the world, evolving through complete understanding of a moment and an experience. The more we accomplish a greater understanding of ourselves, the more we enrich ourselves and our energy with the flows of those around us, the more we become fuller experiences of life. It is my theory that we are all just pieces of life experiencing itself. And so the more that we can experience, the more that we can encounter, and the more that we can do so in healthy ways, the better the universe is for it. Because it takes those experiences, it takes that knowledge, and it puts it deep, deep, deep into itself to become fuller, richer, stronger. The universe is alive. You are the energy of it. Allow yourself to teach the universe and guide it to where it needs and wants to be. You can become the best part of all life around you, just so long as you allow yourself to be a part of all of it around you. So there's a few of you that stuck with me throughout a good portion of that. Well done. Well done. All the power to you guys. 2.5 hours. So normally I've got 3 hours that I like to assign to training things like this. I'll probably have to up my timer on the event for next week just to make sure people know how long it goes for. But we've got some open table time. So if there is any questions that people have about tarot cards, let's take a few minutes just to wrap up on that. And then I'll close this off and call it a day. I am always available on Thursdays for free. I do a live show, same time as this one for starting, and usually 2 or 3 hours long. And on the Thursday show, I will always offer free card draws. If you want to support what I'm doing, the subscription option is a great one here. I'm also on Facebook. You can reach out to me there under Lopik Magic House. Lopik Magic House. If If you search Lopik MH, you usually find me on most platforms as well too. The whole point is help people discover their spiritual self, whatever that may be. And if there's any way I can help you with that, you reach out, let me know. I'll be happy to be guide, listener, healer, or whatever it is that you need. At the end of the day, nothing should be inaccessible, especially spirituality. And so if you are needing, if you are in danger, if you're in need of help, if you're needing support, I am 100% here 100% of the time. Thanks so much, Anna. I appreciate the subscription. At some point, the Tuesdays will become subs only. Simply, most of it's to encourage. I also like eating, but that's different problems for a different day. Really, really appreciate the support. And in any way that you guys can help out, shares, likes, posts, everything else, please, please, please come along with me on this journey. At the end of it all, I'm probably going to end up having something akin to a church to Bob, but that's okay. Because I can, as best as possible, provide all the opportunity to grow within who you are and what you are. We're here for you. We're more than happy to support you. We're going to have a good time with that class, Anna. We're going to have a great time. And like every Tuesday, I will be doing something every Tuesday. This one, I will probably even slow down and go more into each card. I want to start going through different card spreads at some point as well. But I figured defining all the cards first and then playing with the card spreads is always the best way. I might try reversing this someday, but I just found that it usually sticks with people better when you go about it, having them understand what the symbol means. A lot of people too have to figure out what kind of energy do you connect with. If you read patterns and if you read symbols, then it's just a memorization game. Memorizing that this means that and applying that across the board anywhere that you find it. Intuitive readers are a little bit more complex and tricky because for them, they look at the card and they feel a thing. It becomes an immediate connection of card, emotion, card, sensation. And they have to be able to kind of parse their way through that and reflect through it and understand it. So it's a complex study and it's a lifelong study, but we'll have some fun with it for sure. And we're definitely going to take it to the best level that we can for you guys. So it's now 12:26 where I am. I think I've now hit the 3-hour mark. So I'm going to take that as my win for the day. Go shave and go eat some lunch. Thank you all very much for joining me today. It has been and is always a treat and pleasure to be of service to you all. And wherever you go, wherever you are, stay safe, stay well, and goodbye for now.